So I ran across an article talking about how dancers learn a new movement. It was part of a subjective or an interview-based study in Paris in 2018. A group of individuals did a structured interviews with 11 different professional dancers, asking them the same questions about how they go about learning a new movement. And then they did a systematic review of the overlapping responses that they got and developed a model of how we go about learning a new motor movement. I want to highlight a few of these as we watched Tiger Woods swing in his prime. So with, anywhere from half of the dancers saying that they noticed the same thing as another to some of these every single dancer admitted was part of their learning process. One of the things that all the dancers in this study said contributed to their movement development was observation. So one of the quotes was, "The first look is a global look. I look at the energy and situation in space, the most important ones. The second look will focus on the details and how the energy flows. What's the initiation of the motion in the phase?" Okay, so let's take a global look at this swing. So I don't want you to watch anything in particular. I just want you to just relax your eyes and just kind of watch the whole motion in space. So what am I noticing as I take a wide look at this? I'm seeing that the club has lots of width. The club is moving far from his body the whole time. His hands are moving far from him. He's maintaining some nice height. And he's occupying more space on his lead side there as he gets through the ball. Let's watch that again. So he's got some nice height. He's nice and loose. He moves a little right and nice and tall on left side. So we get a sensation that there's a little bit of right motion and a more profound left motion, and he keeps his nice height and he keeps his hands nice and far from him. I would say that's our global look. The second thing that they talked about was imitation. Imitation was a big part. I think somewhere like 80% of the dancers said that imitation was a part of their learning process. And what that is they're just looking to make the move as similar as possible to the desired move. And that's where you take your observation and you make that a little bit more specific. So let's just see his legs here. So I see his left knee moving a little bit. I'll pull it back here. Left knee moves a little bit in on the backswing, and his right knee moves a little bit towards the left knee on the downswing. I'm noticing that. What just happened here? Left knee kind of kicks in a little bit, and then right knee kicks towards it. That was a good swing. Let's watch that one more time. Let's watch his feet. You're gonna notice a little bit of pressure into the right foot, and then it just falls over to the left side. You see how that toe comes up, and he's standing tall over that left leg. So these are things we can start. So we got the feet and the legs down here. So a little into the right, and post up over that left leg, toes up. What's his head doing? So nice and tall, not a lot of movement. And then not afraid to be nice and tall as he moves to his left side. Pretty still, a little left, nice and tall. And those arms are moving nice and wide the whole time. Notice nothing's rushed either. So the next thing that they're going to talk about is that they do something called marking. So marking is defined as making a movement more simple, breaking it down, decomposing the movement, either at a different speed, at a smaller range of movement. And we kind of did this a little bit. Let's swing here, looking at just little parts of it. So let's watch his hands here. So that first motion is going straight back with the hands, and when he gets about belt high, you see that club shaft kind of pitch behind him about 45 degrees to the ground. So his hands are moving straight back, and then he's pitching that club behind him about 45 degrees to the ground. So there's some sensation of straight back with the hands, but eventually we got to get the club behind us, so he moves back. Get a really good look at that there. This kind of segues into the next section, which is segmentation. So whereas marking is breaking down each movement and doing it at partial speed or partial range of motion, segmentation would be, I believe one of the dancers is quoted as saying, it is, how did they phrase it? It was doing like this full speed motion, but breaking it down into smaller segments, especially the more problematic segments. So what I find is that people can move the club pretty well in the takeaway. When that club kind of gets out of their initial field of vision, they kind of don't really know where to put the club in space. And that's where I think it's really important to practice that nice wide takeaway and then pitching that club up behind you at that 45-degree mark. Watch what he does when his hands get about belt high, how the grip changes directions and he pitches that shaft behind him. So what we want to work on is taking those hands straight back and then pitching that club up behind you. That's a really important segment. I want to talk a little bit about what this article says, a learning progression. What is a learning progression? And so all of the dancers admitted that the first step was analysis or analyzing the movement. One quote says, in the beginning, it's just the frame. As I move forward, elements will be added. I do it chronologically and refine every movement. So, this is a process. And, you might start with your coach working on some pretty broad, simple concepts. And then as you're starting to master those, that's when you're going to start adding in the details. And that sounds like, from this dance article, that crosses all sports. The next thing that they agreed on was integration was an important part. Integration is basically just making a movement natural through repetition, through good repetition. So practicing these movements, practicing blending these movements, using smaller segments, smaller speed, smaller range of motion, to make sure you're doing the move correctly. And at first, it's going to feel like you're placing the club in awkward spots, but the more you do good practice, the more you're going to integrate it where it becomes what you consider natural or fluid. The study also talked about how fluidity and the natural feeling of the motion is a sign that you're progressing and you're learning, and that takes time. The last thing I want to talk about is personalization. So notice that this is the last step, not the first step. So we want to, when we see, 99% of great players doing something, we probably want to try to do that as best as we can until we face a limitation or a limiting factor. We're not all built like prime Tiger Woods, but I'd say the vast majority of the things that he does are things that we can and should emulate as, we would any other great player. If you're 70 years old, we're probably going to eventually, once you've studied and mimicked enough and gotten the general motions down, we're probably going to have to make a few little compensations because your bodies aren't the same. And some of the dancers talk about that, how even if they're all trying to do the same dance motion, it'll have little nuances to it. Someone's quoted as saying that's their body signature. in dance. So everyone's move, even if they're trying to do it the same, is going to look a little different. But we like to have more in common with great players than different. So when you're watching, good players at your club or watching on TV, try to implement some of these things. Take a wide look at the general motion in space. Try to mimic these things at slow speeds. The worst thing you can do is try to do a whole dance performance without observing, marking, segmenting. Really learning a sport shouldn't be any different when it comes to that. So take a broad look for the major things that you immediately can see that's different about their swings than yours, and then see how you can break that down and make that more simple for yourself.